Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is episode 217. We are over 6 years into this podcast, and one of the resounding themes for me has been how much I have learned from folks outside of baseball that I think we've been able to apply to our work with baseball players. And this episode is going to be a great example. We're going to dig into the world of golf, certainly a lot of commonalities in extension rotation sports, using the ground, finding efficient rotation. All these things are vitally important, and this is a guy who does it as well as anybody in the world with respect to dealing with high-level golfers, but also developing junior golfers. It was fascinating kind of going through this conversation with him and seeing how much his story in terms of kind of building a reputation and a brand in the golf community parallels a lot of what we've done with Cressey Sports Performance in the baseball community. And frankly, it was fun for me because I really enjoy some of the variety we get in our business with our tennis players, our golfers, our NFL quarterbacks, our swimmers. We do see people in kind of related disciplines to this baseball community. So really enjoyed this conversation, and I think you will too. This episode is brought to you by AG1, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it can be difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states, on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where AG1 can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. That's why I use it daily, as do several of my family members, and we recommend it to our athletes. 1 scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. They support energy, focus, digestion, and recovery. And this can happen for less than $3 per day and without taking multiple products. While most nutritional supplements come to market and remain stagnant, AG1 continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing over 50 improvements in the last decade. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure that their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best tasting nutrition habit on the planet. Whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it'll work for you. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar per serving. They put 75 ingredients through the rigorous NSF certification test to come up with a safe formula that's trusted by some of the world's top athletes, including many of our own at Cressey Sports Performance. Right now, AG1 is giving our listeners a special welcome kit that includes AG1 travel packs and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 when you subscribe. Just head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim this special offer. These travel packs are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health when you're traveling for games, training, or simply when you're on the go. They can be a great counterbalance to the less than ideal on-the-road food options. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance of getting nutrient diversity, head to drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey, to get the travel packs and vitamin D3 and K2 with your first purchase. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey. You won't regret it. Today's guest was raised in England and came to the U.S. in 1994 on a college golf scholarship to the University of Southern Mississippi. He then became team captain and earned a bachelor's degree in coaching. While playing professionally thereafter, inconsistencies and injury led to him questioning golf's traditional theories and ideas for teaching. These discoveries gave rise to a coaching approach that applies a holistic sports science approach to develop golfers of all levels. He founded Blackburn Golf in 2000 and was voted Golf Digest #1 teacher and coach in America for 2024 and 2025, one of Golf Magazine's top 100 teachers, and was the 2020 PGA America National Teacher of the Year. As director of instruction at the Blackburn Golf Academy at the Greystone Country Club in Birmingham, Alabama, he works with golfers of all levels. As you'll learn on this podcast, he works with some of the best professional golfers on the planet, including CSP athlete Matt Fitzpatrick, who actually connected us. Please welcome to the show, Mark Blackburn. Mark, I am super excited to have you, man. We were joking off the air that I feel like we always learn more when we get out of our chosen sports and nerd out with people from different walks of life. So I'm excited to talk to a golf guy. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to talk to you. Obviously, it's great to be at your gym last week with Matt. A big fan of yours and what you do. So it's always good to talk to sort of the leaders in other sport in industries, and that's definitely you. So I'm excited to get into it.
Nice, man. Maybe we'll solve some really challenging things together. But first, let's talk about your story because it's interesting, man. You got people all over the world coming to see you. It's Alabama, correct?
Yeah, Birmingham,
So
Alabama.
yeah,
So
so you got some big dogs that are flying in, and obviously it was a long road to get there. So maybe share a little bit about how you wind up where you are today, being one of the top teachers, for professional golfers on the planet.
So yeah, it's pretty funny. I grew up in England. I was a pretty late sort of comer to golf. I played every other sport. I spent most of my time playing sports as opposed to really studying very much in the classroom. Was notorious for missing school and being at a golf course, with aspirations that I was going to play. So I was fortunate enough to come to America, got a scholarship, and then I went to school in Mobile first for a few years at a Baptist school, and then I got recruited to Southern Miss and graduated there and played there. And then I studied exercise science and coaching. At the time, I was like, well, if I'm not going to do the playing thing, I kind of like sports and coaching sports. So it kind of made sense. And Southern Miss had a good football program. So at the time, that was pretty cool because you're around a lot of different
Yeah.
athletes and lots of different coaches. So it was a fascinating sort of insight. I enjoyed the exercise physiology side of stuff. Like it was always quite interesting, but it was in the back of my mind. We'll,
Mhm.
we'll come fast forward to that a bit later. So then I tried to play for a few years and I was pretty determined, but I didn't have very good information. And unfortunately, you can have a lot of talent, but if you don't necessarily have the right information or potentially the wrong information, that's not great. And then I had the perfect storm where I had an injury due to probably some poor technique and I really wasn't able to play anymore. But the sponsor I had at the time, I'd moved to Alabama after I graduated, and the sponsor at the time said, "Look, I've got a golf course here. You can come live here in the maintenance shed," which was entertaining, and then I'll let you teach here. So then you can try and while you're rehabbing your injury, see if you like the teaching thing. And it kind of, long story short, I was a lot better at teaching and helping people than I was at hitting golf shots myself. Now, I think I was a pretty good player, not the same level as the guys I coach now, but good enough to where I was able to, the equivalent of the minor leagues in baseball. And I was pretty competent. I was a good ball striker, probably not the best at putting, which is quite significant if you want to be a really good golfer. And so hitting the golf ball was always quite easy and I could hit it a fairly long way. So it was not hard to demonstrate and show people things. I just probably wasn't as good at putting it all together, the final piece of actually playing the game. And so I had some success early teaching. I was notorious for giving golf lessons, which were supposed to be 30 minutes that last about 3 hours, but that meant I didn't have to go in the golf shop or do any of the menial tasks that golf professionals do, like folding shirts, selling tees, golf balls. That's not my MO at all. So anyway, I kind of basically ended up teaching full time up there at a place called Gunners Landing in Gunnersville, Alabama. If anyone's ever come and see me there, it has the most picturesque driving range, looks over Lake Gunnersville, but it looks like a ski slope at Vale, like a bump slope. So it's not the best driving range, but I had quite a bit of success. And one of the guys who I'd played mini tours with, Heath Slocum, was on the PGA Tour. It was his rookie year, 2003. And then to the end of '03, beginning of '04, he was struggling a bit. And then I basically got asked to help him. And that was my Willy Wonka golden ticket, as they say. And kind of from there, I was really fortunate and snowballed that into other players. And then in about 2007, a Swedish guy called Robert Carlson asked for my help. And he went on in 2008 to become the number one player in Europe. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to capitalize on all of this because there was no social media at that point. There was no anything. So, and I was still in little old Gunnersville, Alabama. But I started traveling the tour. And then in about 2013, I was headhunted to Birmingham to Greystone. And Greystone's a 36 hole facility, great neighborhood. I live in it. I'm here now. And basically, they wanted to create a center of excellence for instruction. And so the board kind of brought me on as a consult, and then the job sounded so good. I said, well, I might be interested in it. And then it kind of flipped into here you go, we'd like you to come here. And that's kind of January 1st, 2014 was my first day. And I think from there, I always tell everyone Greystone was kind of the springboard with the board that's here, the membership, the general manager that's here, Dave Porter, like those people were very instrumental in like, look, we want you to go travel the world, kind of be an ambassador for Greystone, but have your academy here. I've got a great team of people. I inherited one guy who's a superstar, Brian Speakman, who's now my academy director. And we built a really cool team of 5 coaches. So I wouldn't be able to do what I do without Greystone and, the platform that I've got here now. So very, very fortunate. And that kind of gave me the springboard to much better facility. All of a sudden now it's easier for people to come to me. I always make the joke, Alabama, but I'm like, well, James Andrews arguably was the best orthopedic surgeon in the US anyway, and people used to come to Alabama. So
True.
I thought I wasn't going to make that a constraint of being successful. And I've always been probably a little outside the box, which is probably why I've been above average at what I do. And I think that's probably put me in good stead. When you're somewhere where you have to maybe work a little bit harder because everything's not on your doorstep, that kind of means that people are seeking you as the expert. So it's been great, really fortunate. Now I'm also a member at Shoal Creek. So I take players out there as well. So I have a great setup here, world-class facilities, great academy team, all the resources technology-wise that I could ever have dreamed of. My wife's really happy because she finally got a swimming pool last year. Until then, all my revenue had gone towards technology so I could give people better answers, but I'd kind of run out of stuff to buy. So she finally got a swimming pool. So she's very happy.
I love it. It's wild because that story really parallels even from like the actual year 2007. Like that was a springboard year. When we started the facility ourselves in Massachusetts, like I remember distinctly having conversation with my business partner. I'm like, will pro baseball players really come and spend the winter in Massachusetts? And like, the only way to test it is to deliver a quality product and have people talk about you. But you're right. I can remember those years. I mean, Twitter wasn't around back then. I think it started 2009, give or take. Instagram was not even in the brainchild right now at that point. So, one of the things that I thought was really fascinating about that story though is it's one thing to be a good instructor and a nerd and a good coach and really dig on this. It's another thing to be able to scale it, right? And that requires you to be a good leader. It requires you to be a good scheduler. You have to be way more progressive. Was that a struggle for you? Because I think we see so many technicians like in our world, right, of coaching that aren't necessarily great entrepreneurs. Like I still, 20 something years in, still don't consider myself a good manager of people. Like, did you struggle with that part of the actual business?
Yeah, I think we all do. I think, look, I've got some friends and mentors that are very successful in the business world, and they all tell me, and I didn't necessarily believe it, but I 100% believe it now, that personnel and people are going to be the hardest thing for you. Yeah. And they're so right, because you get good people and you train them. And my mindset is, look, I'm going to make it so good for you that you never want to leave, but I'm also going to give you the tools to be really successful, because that's my job, to build a coaching tree, to bestow that on other people. So I'm kind of spreading my information. And so when you do a good job of that, there's a bit of a catch-22, so to speak. So, but it is hard. People are difficult. And I think one of the things that successful people I seem to see is our attention to detail. We're pretty anal. We keep an eye on everything. Everyone says multitasking doesn't exist, but I disagree. I think people are pretty good, can spin a lot of plates at the same time, and they have a skill to be able to know what needs prioritizing and how do you do that. And that comes obviously with, we all do mess things up and we learn what needs to be done properly. But I think the scaling part is always, I feel like I've got so much more to learn. I always feel like I'm a dumbass all the time. Like I can't believe I've missed that. So I'm always trying to learn. So I'm never really content with where I'm at. I've kind of, Nick Saban has a saying, so what's next, which I got from my buddy, Greg McElroy. And I'm definitely like that. I'm very underwhelmed. When I accomplish something, I'm like, is that it? Okay, what's next? So I think that goes into from a business perspective, you're always pushing the boundaries and not afraid to make mistakes and try new things. But your people are the most important thing in your business, and you have to kind of nurture, mentor them, and cultivate them to be great. Unfortunately, you can't duplicate yourself, because if you could, I'm sure if you could duplicate yourself, things would be much easier. And that to me is the hard part. And so I always give people a bit of grace and go, okay, well, what's my expectation, and what should it be on what's their capacity to be able to fulfill what I want. And I think you get better at delegating when you realize, okay, what can this person's bandwidth handle, and what ensures that they're able to complete the tasks that we need them to. So I think that all comes with it. But I think the best part, if for me, is like when you work with multiple players, you have to be very much a chameleon yourself, and you have to figure out you have to change your skills, communication, leadership wise, because it's different in different teams. And obviously, say Matt Fitzpatrick, for example, he has a performance director, Luke Mackey, who kind of puts all the pieces together. And then in other teams, that's my task. So you're changing roles, but I think all of that really helps you being able to scale your own business. And then I think the other part is, people talk about mum and pop businesses. I think there's a point where you try and scale, and then you get to this saturation where you're like, okay, wait a minute, is it worth going any further?
Yeah.
What's the sacrifice or that I'm gonna have to make? And then sometimes what all made us successful is we don't want to necessarily give up all that control. And I think that's the hard part. So it's like, now I'm at a point where I'm really content. Maybe down the road I would open other schools if the situation arose. But again, it's all dependent on the team that you're able to put in there. And if they're a few thousand miles away, and you're not there hand on them day in, day out, it's really, really challenging.
Oh my God, we are the same person. First off, you said, you're not good at smelling the roses. When you saying that, I'm like, man, I think our wives would get along really well, because my wife has told me that. But I can tell you, as a guy who's gone from 1 to 2 facilities, if I was going to go 2 to 3, I might as well go 2 to 30. So we're very content with, our second location being it. But you're right. You have to figure out if the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
So, hey, we'll jump ship a little bit to a different topic, and I'm actually really fascinated, because I know you've got some amazing bells and whistles in terms of technology at your facility. And interestingly, golf has been far ahead of baseball on a number of fronts, and technology is certainly one of them. Club fitting came way before bat fitting, right? You guys have had force plates, you've had motion capture. You look at TPI, they did work in the golf community far before they ever started looking at baseball and softball players. I'm curious how you use tech, how at times maybe you've overused tech and regretted it.
Yeah.
How does it fit into what you do on a daily and more macro basis?
So I'd say I'm definitely a nerd, a tech nerd, but from this perspective of, what does it allow me to learn? Okay, so that gives me the tools to be a better coach, so I can make a diagnosis or a decision on the field in the arena of play or practice without the technology.
Yeah.
So I think that's the first part. Everybody, you get a lot of, there's old school and new school when it comes to golf coaching. A lot of the old school is, oh, my eyes are a video camera and I know this and I know that. And those people generally have incredible interpersonal skills, and they're great at making people believe they've got great coaching skills. But the problem you have now is we kind of have this BS detector in technology, because you can tell somebody that this is what they need to do. And if the stars align and they can do it, and you're really convincing, and their physical characteristics match it up, you can have a lot of success. But the problem is, as many as successes as you have, no one's hearing about all of the failures you have. Now, that was before social media. You never heard of it. Now you start to, there's this, you start to see where before and afters, and this was a mistake and this was good. So I think the technology I use motion capture, force plates, video, pretty much anything you can measure golf now, we use. The difficult part is that we're not measuring in competition. So when we get to kinematics, kinetics, and all of the biomechanical things that people like to talk about, and golf professionals and coaches argue for hours, and it's just a bit nonsensical, because until we measure in the arena of play during tournaments, and we've got markerless capture that works, or some type of very uninvasive marker set, some of it's speculation, because I know when I put someone in a square box and they've got a lot of ability to line things up and they're maxing out certain things. That's not necessarily what they're doing when they're playing a shot into a wind or a different condition. So technology is brilliant in terms of practice and controlling what somebody does and measuring, but that measurement has some limitations because it's not in the realm of play. And then people will say, well, it's the same. And I would argue just taking a TrackMan, which is the radar that obviously used in baseball and in golf on the golf course, and if the wind's off the right versus the left and where they aim, and then the delivery numbers are very, very different based on that. So that alone is the sort of litmus test to go, wait a minute, that's not completely what they're doing when they're on the driving range or in the teaching center. So I like to say that capturing data with technology is great to get a baseline, to get an understanding of what somebody does in a controlled environment, what they potentially are likely to do in a random variable field of play environment. But there's always the but. And I think that's the part that, for me, sometimes early on, when you're a younger coach, now I'm 50, but when I was doing it 20 years ago, I always wanted to get credibility early. So I'd probably over deliver and I would vomit information to try and create credibility. Whereas now I would say, I probably don't say that much. I probably am more about, you're on a need to know basis. Here's the big thing that's causing you the issues, the cancer, the problem, and then let's work around that. But everybody has a tendency. And obviously, once you identify that, you know it gets exposed under pressure. And it's kind of the weakest link, so to speak. So I'm sure pitchers or batters have tendencies. And then when they're in the World Series, some of that gets exposed, or they're, in a position where there's pressure. Golf is no different. So it's really understanding, okay, what does this tech tell me they're doing, their pattern, their tendencies, and then how do I see that change environmentally with stress, conditions, all of these other things. And I think good coaching is setting people up for the best possible success day in, day out when they're at a tournament. How do you get them to play and shoot the lowest score? And sometimes, well, not sometimes, all the time, I think less is more when it comes to actually accomplishing that.
Isn't that an amazing phenomenon in the coaching world? Like the more you know, the less you have to say, right? I'm fascinated by how stupid I was, 20 years ago getting into this. It was, like you said, it was alphabet soup. You'd be giving them a kinesthetic cue, trying to put them in a position while describing everything they could do wrong, while also describing what you want them to do right. And meanwhile, there's music blaring in the background. There's probably a couple athletes that are distracting at the same time. Is like our athletes are constantly overwhelmed. And I think golf is a great example for it. Like obviously in that world, there's a ton of pressure. And the last thing you want to do is just throw 1,000 different thoughts in their mind. How has that impacted your coaching? Like, are you more constraints based? Are you externally focused? Are you more analogy driven? Are there certain things that you've found yourself using as strategies to be more clear, concise, efficient in your coaching?
Yeah, so I would say I try and be pretty meticulous on identifying what someone's pattern is or blueprint. I've done that for a long time. Our logo is kind of a symbol for the different parts of a golf swing, and then how do you catalog those so I'm big on building a blueprint for somebody. But I would also say one of my good friends is Dr. Will Wu, who's a motor learning guy. And as I've gotten to know more experts in that field, I would say external cues, metaphors, analogies tend to be way more effective than internal cues. So it's always like, okay, well, here's the technical internal mechanism we're trying to develop. How do I create external cues for them that will work for them under pressure? Now, there's sometimes internal cues do work, but the reality is the more I can make it metaphorical or an analogy-based, that it resonates with them. And a lot of times I'll suggest some, and then I like the player to be part of the process, because if I come up with it, it's not necessarily always going to hit home. Whereas if they've come up with it, now all of a sudden it's their go-to. It's like their safety blanket. Oh, okay, I can do that. I know that because they came up with it internally. So I always say, like, Matt Fitzpatrick, our mutual client, initially was big on just tell me what to do. But I'm like, well, Matt, that does me no good. And he's like looking at me and I'm like, I can tell you what to do. But if you have no ownership in the process, when you're
Yeah.
on the last hole at Augusta and you need to do something, you've got to be able to understand the how, the what, the why,
Mhm.
so that you can execute. And there's this train of thought that's like, oh, they good players just do it.
Mhm.
Well, they do it because of repetition and experience and awareness and understanding, and they know they can do it. They've created a fact in practice, but it has to be built on something. And that's, I think, external cues. It's a long answer, but it takes a lot to get to that, right? You have to do all the technical piece and you have to identify what it is, but then you have to go there. I always say, a friend of mine said it really well: simplicity is on the other side of complexity. So you take all the complex stuff and then you filter it
Yeah.
down to like the really simple cat ran up the hill or whatever it is for the player, so that now they know, okay, I've identified the one or two things and here's the crazy cue. Charlie Hoffman is my favorite client because they're not suitable for a podcast, but they're so graphic and crude, his cues. But that's Charlie. If you understand Charlie, that's his personality. So those are what resonate. And so we'll be on a driving range, and if someone listened to the discussion on what they're talking about, they go, "What on earth are you all doing?" But it's because that's what sticks. That's the
Yeah.
vernacular that I've created with him. It's very different with Matt. It'd be different with Daniel Berger, different with Justin Rose. Like, play, it's all to do with the player and how do I
Yeah.
take the complex technical and make it, like, as I say, redneck stupid.
Yeah. And Fitzy's an interesting example because he's arguably the most objectively driven player in the history of golf. The way he's documented everything he's ever done. And that can be great, but it can also be challenging when you're trying to find nuance. And I think that's what we're ultimately trying to do with coaching is like some people need something very subtle, and some people you have to bring into a massive overcorrection just to get that subtle change. So I mean, that's where coaching is far more art than it is science. Building on that, so golf may have been ahead on tech. I think it's been surprisingly far behind other sports with respect to, fitness slash strength and conditioning. I think in ways it's shockingly even been passed by tennis. Like I think in the past, tennis was just guys getting run into the ground on the court all the time. And you look at the top 25 tennis players on the planet, and they're put together. They're doing some impressive stuff, not just with their training, but in their monitoring and all that stuff. So I think we both agree, like at the professional level, the buy-in to solid training covers a really wide range, right? You have some people that don't do anything, right? They're just blessed with skills that they've, made work for a really long time. And we have other players that they probably overdo it, guys that have pushed it too hard in the weight room and maybe seen the injury consequences. And there's some stuff that you can see on social media that's absolutely laughable. It's juggling on a stability ball, right? So very few have found the sweet spot in the middle. Why do you think this is the case with golf? Why has it been such a broad adoption, kind of approach across the sport versus like you go to professional baseball and like you don't see guys doing egregiously dumb stuff. But at the same time, you maybe don't see the same kind of cutting edge stuff that you might for someone who's incredibly locked in at the highest level in golf.
Yeah, I think it's a sort of a combination of factors.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you go historically, you would get an intern at a Division 1 school
Mhm.
who was this S&C
That's a
intern
good
who
point.
would end up with the golf team. Okay, so, and traditionally, I mean, when I was in school, there was no rotary sort of training
Yeah.
whatsoever. It was like, we're going to do bench press, we're going to
Yeah.
do squats, we're going to do
Print out the
dead.
football program.
Yeah, you're basically doing the football
Yeah.
program. And so I think that initially there probably wasn't a market in golf
Good point.
fitness, right? So people were until Greg and Dave, give them credit, kind of pioneered the industry.
Yeah.
If someone was a golfer and they wanted help, they'd probably come see someone like you who was a pioneer in your field, someone like you or Ben Shear
Yeah.
who was a strength and conditioning expert in baseball, which is a rotary sport, and there's lots of parallels, right? But there was not a array of options. So I think then all of a sudden there's a lot of information about, okay, I'm golf fitness, and everybody realized, well, there's lots of golfers and every country club needs somebody. So now there was a slew of people who were
Yeah.
putting their shingle out as golf fitness professionals, but they might have come and done a level 1 seminar with us, and really they didn't have any business like
Yeah.
professionally advocating that they might have some understanding, but they weren't strength and conditioning coaches. And I think the hard part is there's not enough true experts in the golf space. And there's lots of people who teach football players how to get stronger, or basketball players. Do you know what I mean? Because those are compound exercises, so to speak. And they're just, this is what we've done for years, and we'll keep doing it. Oh, you're a golfer. Well, let's try a few of these. I went on a course last weekend. I'm going to do that. So it's just a 2-point answer. And I think there's a way it's always been done. I think golf was at the bottom of the totem pole. There wasn't really any money in it initially. I don't think there was any innovation in it until Dave and Greg in the mid 2000s. And then I think lots of people have got into it that aren't really qualified to do it. Now, on the other side, I think that golfers historically, if you looked at the workout that Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer probably did, it involved vodka or gin after the game and consumption of it, sitting in the bar. They were really talented and they just played golf, and it was a kind of different thing. And then when Tiger came along, Tiger was kind of always working out. Now, Tiger's pathology of injury, he's a phenomenal athlete. One would say perhaps some of his S&C work wasn't necessarily the best for his body, and he's injured a lot. But he was the sort of catalyst for change. And then lots of people started doing it. And I think in college, we've now got better programs. I think people are starting to understand it. We've got better people. People realize, look, this is what it's a lot more akin to baseball. Here are the things that we need to do. And there's a lot more incredible good strength and conditioning experts that have come to golf. For me, the most important person on my teams is my S&C person. So on Matt's team, it's you and Andrew and Luke. Justin Rose, it's Charlie Marshall and Justin Buckthorpe. Jason Glass is Adam Hadwin, Max Homer. On Ben Shear is Daniel Berger, right? So like Rob Goldup is Alex Fitzpatrick. So like the guys that I have the most success with in the teams that I would argue I've had the most success over time have always had an S&C person, not a medical professional being the cat. So a lot of people are like, oh, I need a chiro, I need a physio. Well, I'm of the mindset, look, if you're doing, as we said in your gym last week, if you're doing the right S&C work, you don't need to be adjusted all the time. Exercise is going to hold you posturally and give you the right stuff. And then, through overuse, you're going to need treatment. So now I would argue that the strength and conditioning I see with my players, there's some incredibly really good S&C work done, but not every golfer sees that value. So the ones that see the value, seek the expert, will compensate necessarily the right way because they realize there's a huge value on it. I'm a massive proponent because I'm like, the best place for us to make adjustments and changes isn't just hitting a ball, it's in the gym. Because as soon as I put the ball down, you're going to regress back to the other patterns that you've had. And there's a lot of people who push back on that. I'm not saying you go to the gym and you're going to get, your golf swing is going to get better. I'm going to say you're going to get a chance to pattern differently, which gives you the potential and the propensity to get better when you do hit golf balls. So I think that the information now is much, much better. But I think for a long time it was archaic. And golfers did the wrong thing. And when you do the wrong thing, you get hurt. So now there's a phobia of, if I work out, I'm not going to be able to play golf. And I think that's the part where obviously the periodization of when you exercise, what you should do, when you should do it through the year is very, very different. There's certain players who work out really, really hard and it works for them. Their individual anatomical, gifts allow them to be able to do that. But that's probably the minority, right? And so people see Rory McIlroy and he's changed his body composition and he looks really different and he hits the ball a long way. Oh, I got to do what Rory does, but may not be able to do that. And that may not be the best for everybody. And everybody's sort of biology, chemistry is a little different. What works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for the other person. So, and golfers, as we joked about when I was with you, they're not built like baseball players. Most of them have no arse at all disease and they're wiry, which gives them a higher propensity for injury, probably, whereas a baseball player is built like more like me with big legs, a big old rear end, and they're strong, so they can withstand a little bit more torque and some of the other things that happens when you play golf.
We interrupt this podcast with a quick reminder that this episode is brought to you by AG1. It's an NSF certified all-in-one superfood supplement that features 75 whole food sourced ingredients designed to support your body's nutritional needs. I use this product daily myself, and a ton of our athletes do as well. Head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim my special offer, a welcome kit that includes AG1 travel packs and a bottle of vitamin D3 plus K2 when you first subscribe. AG1 gives you peace of mind that you're covering all of your nutritional bases. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey, to get that special offer.
Yeah, so it's all changing.
Yeah. And I think that's something Stu McGill has done some great, kind of talks about that, where you look at some of these, if we throw some of these PGA guys on a table and do a lumbar locked rotation test, like you'll see guys that are, 100, 110 degrees of passive thoracic rotation. Like they're gummies, like, and they have these tiny spines, right? You expect to see these, like, if you're used to dealing with NFL players, you see these lumbar vertebrae that are just massive for handling compression. PGA spines they're kind of dainty, right? You can Gumby them all over the place and do crazy stuff. Like, and Miguel's made a great point. They have smaller discs. They just don't handle compression. They probably handle shear stress much better, and a lot of the bending that takes place. But if you just try to take that guy and turn him into a 450 squatter or deadlift the house, like, it works for a little bit, right? Maybe they actually get some feelings of like motor control and a lot of their passive stability, but eventually too much of a good thing takes them too far. So I think your point's really, really well made. Like, it's knowing how much is too much. But I think what's happened is you probably saw a lot of those guys that were getting the daily adjustments, the treatments all the time. Either A, they were doing it because they were training horribly, and it was basically playing for the tie with some of those aberrant patterns that they were ingraining. Or B, they were really loose guys who were actually weak in the first place, and they would just get on the table and they'd get a bunch of protective tension released, and they'd get off and it'd feel good for 20 minutes, and it would go right back to being a problem. So I think that's a really good point. And it's frankly a conversation I had with two separate tennis coaches in the last 6 months, that they've gotten away from so many treatments, and they've just pushed like the right kind of strength training more and more than they ever had before.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I see the folks that have had an injury or a return from injury, and the ones who've had strength and conditioning work done properly, I call it to protect themselves, of bulletproof themselves, are the ones that don't have reoccurring injury. If they've just gone, I don't like lifting, I'm just going to get treatment. The treatment, this is just treating the symptom. It's never addressing the cause. And I think that's highly problematic with the fact that golf's becoming more and more speed dominant. The kid who just won tonight, this Michael Brennan kid from Wake Forest, like 190 ball speed, and he's like smashing it dead straight every time. So the game is changing and evolving. But as you said, if you were to kind of look at it objectively from the, bird's eye view, it's a great point about small spines, little people, because most golfers are pretty small. Like when you look at them, they're petite's the wrong word, but if you put them next to a big athlete, they're just not all of them, but a lot of them, they're Dustin Johnson's and Brooks Koepka are the anomalies, right? So it's like their propensity for injury is likely if they don't do the right things from a strength and conditioning perspective. So hopefully it's going to get better. More folks like you, Ben, the guys I work with, hopefully it happens.
Keep fighting the good fight, right? So you've got, and you listed several of them, like Matt Fitzpatrick and Daniel Berger, Justin Rose. These guys are all built very, very different, right? So you've got students, not just at the professional, but across all levels. And having followed some of your stuff, like the one thing that this resonates over and over again is like there is no one solution that works for everybody. Each swing is a little bit different because each body is a little bit different. And I think you coach them accordingly. So I'm curious, what are the things that everyone has to do well? Like, what are the commonalities of success, particularly when you look at tech, and then maybe where do you see the most individual variance? What do all elite players do in your eyes?
Yeah, so I think the best players, you've got a direction you're swinging, and then you've got to orientate the face of the club, right? So you've got two things going on, and the best players know the direction they need to swing relative to where they're able to point the face, whether the face points right and they swing left, or whether the face points left or they swing right, or whether they swing straight and the face is straight. That's what the best players do. So my job is to figure out, and that's either a draw or a fade or a relatively straight shot. And they all really want to curve it one way. Mm-hmm. So then based on their physiology, movement tendencies, preferences, experience, all of those things go into what's the best way for them to move the ball in the way they want to do it. And that's what the best players all do. Now, they're very, very confident that what they do is what's best for them. As in, you rarely take someone that was a drawer and make them a fader or vice versa. So they have a way they see a golf course, the lens they set up with, this is how I'm going to play the game. My job is to give them a better strategy to do that based on what they show up with. And most of them are predisposed to certain movements from their physiology, like their movement patterns and their, just either injury or just asymmetry, whatever they do. And then it's like, okay, well, this is what you should do. And you need to get more competent at doing that. And then how do we develop a pattern that's pretty robust, where if I put a gun to your head, you think that you're going to be able to hit the shot 99% of the time before you ever do it. And that's really the difference. So Justin Rose likes to draw. Daniel Berger likes to fade. Matt Fitzpatrick likes to hit a fade with his irons and sometimes draw it and then a fade with his driver. Like Max Homa likes to fade everything. They're all different. Like it's Alex Fitzpatrick likes to hit a draw with his irons, a fade with his driver. So there's a bit of a conflict there, but in essence, the geometry that allows you to draw an iron can allow you to fade a driver. And I just try and build something around what they are able to do. Occasionally, hey, player X, this won't work. This is the easiest, simplest strategy for you. The great thing about teaching Mrs. Haverkamp and Sammy the Slicer and Harry the Hooker here at Greystone is you have to come up with real world strategies and solutions very, very quickly, which are really useful when you have a tour player shouting at you or throwing clubs, Range or Augusta or the US Open, because those same strategies you use to control a club face and the face and path are what's like puppeteering a tour player or a really good player. So it's what I would say the commonality about the best players is they're able to put the club on the ball very consistently, generally out the middle of the face towards the target with their intended shape. And that's the commonality they have. And so when you stand behind them on the range, if you put a sheet behind them and you just watch the balls come out, they're all pretty similar. The environment they play on necessitates certain ball behavior. If your ball comes into the green like this way versus landing really soft, you're not going to be able to play the PGA Tour.
Yeah.
You might can play in Europe or on a lesser tour where the conditions are really benign, but on the PGA Tour, the greens get really firm. So there's a certain ball behavior, and organically players develop certain things to be able to accomplish that. So if you looked at the balls come out, they kind of look pretty similar, maybe shaped a little bit, not much curve, but they all look pretty similar. But then if you pulled the curtain up and you looked at how they do it, oh, goodness gracious, there's some variability in their technique. And I think technology's allowed us to say, look, there's an infinite number of ways to swing the club. But if you want to hit a certain shot, most people kind of tend to look quite similar coming into impact to produce a draw, or similar coming into impact to produce a fade. That's, when you net it down to the actual skill required to execute the task, it's pretty simple. It's just all the other stuff that gets them set to that.
And will they look very similar when you look at both the force plate presentations as well as the actual sequencing that takes place with your motion capture cameras? Like, how much do guys deviate dramatically? But I have to assume there are very specific things that they all do.
Yeah, they're very specific, but they're kind of unique to the player. So I always dumb it down is players can either be kind of torque driven. So anterior, posterior force, very kind of more horizontal plane torque driven. They might look a bit more like a pull hitter in baseball, how they move. And then you have a lot of frontal plane where they're way more right, left force, medial, lateral, and vertical. And they tend to hit balls a little bit higher. You see, so they're a combination of the two, right? If you look at purely ground reaction forces, and then if you look at club kinetics, how do they power the club? What are they doing? There's definitely, the technology says, okay, this is what you do. If you want to avoid a certain scenario, here are the strategies we would use. If you want to hit it further, a lot of times everyone's seeking distance. And I go, well, hitting a ball further is not hard. The question is, are you able to manage that face to path relationship? And some people, you add speed and it takes them a long time. There's an arrears of the club face. It takes them time to match that up. But unfortunately, they're relying on hitting the ball in play so they can score. Now, all of a sudden, well, I can swing faster, but it goes sideways. I'm like, well, opportunity cost. What do you want to do? So again, I think the technology allows us to see what they do. I think kinematics is a very interesting thing because there's lots of people who are necessarily not efficient if you were to go on traditional model of maximizing angular velocity in terms of pelvis, thorax, shoulder, arm, club. But there's some people who don't have that sequence and they're incredibly accurate. And then if you try to get them the right sequence, they get worse. So again, the data capture tells us what they're doing. Sometimes it's like a doctor, do no harm. It's like, okay, well, here's what you do, but I know what you do. That might cause us some problems somewhere else. It may not be efficient from a distance perspective, but that might be what makes you the unicorn you are and allows you to be great. And I think that's the artistic part of coaching is like, take all the data. And young Mark, 20 years ago, might go, oh, you're not efficient. You need to change that.
Yeah.
Wise Mark, wiser Mark goes, okay, here's what you do. This is in my back pocket. I'm now look at things and go, oh, that's interesting. Okay, where's that going to show up somewhere else? Oh, it gets them there. But is that causing enough of a deficit to their overall scoring to mention it? If it is, yes, you might say have intervention. But a lot of times it's more understanding the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. Yeah. And it's a question of how do I manage that? And I think that's the part, like a good coach is a good manager of movement and understanding what's the threshold within which this person needs to operate. And how do I ensure that we stay kind of in the medium middle and we don't get to these extremes where bad stuff happens? Yeah. And a lot of times it's bad stuff can happen because golfers are bonkers and they over practice. Mm-hmm. Then is it, where are we in the season? And is it time for intervention or is it time for like, okay, this is crisis management. Yeah. Until we get to a point where, okay, hard stop, time out. This ain't going to work. You're going to get injured. Reason you're struggling, we need to have an intervention and we need to get back more to here. So that's the part that good players can make bad patterns work for a period of time. Mm-hmm. They don't see the regression immediately, but over time it catches up with them and then you start to see it in their stats. And that's the hard part. Short term, they're great compensators and manipulators, but that catches up with them because the more of the layering of those compensations there are, then it's a ticking time bomb. And at some point it can go from really good to really bad very quickly. And now all of a sudden we're in slump city.
and hurt, right? Like it's not just.
And the injury is probably, I would say, having had players that have got injured, inherently, not necessarily, I would say that I don't think it was my fault. I think they're playing a game with tiny spines. Yeah. Inherently, I think sometimes people load themselves beyond their capacity, whether it's from a volume or a magnitude perspective, and then people get injured. So the hard part is I want to be protecting players. My long-term thing is you can't play if you're injured and you can't make any money and you can't win tournaments and lift trophies if you're hurt. So number one is what we're doing going to keep you safe?
Especially in a sport like golf where you can go. I mean, it's not... There's 3 guys over the age of 40 in professional baseball, give or take. Like guys can play, not just the PGA Tour, they can play the senior PGA if they're able to do this at a high level for a long time. So it's to your advantage to not try to give them, a golf swing that doesn't match up with their anthropometric characteristics, their physical limitations, all that.
Yeah, and the hard part of this thing is the devil, because there's lots of people offering information, which is good information. Mm-hmm. And they think, oh, I can do that. And that looks good. I'll do that. But I use the analogy of going into a pharmacy. There's all the drugs in a pharmacy are good for someone. You take the wrong one, you're done. And that's the problem with social media is lots of information out there. And then people, they look at something and they think that that's what they need to do. And I'm like, what? I spend a lot of time policing people's thoughts and ideas on the swing. So I'm always like, well, if you've got some ideas, tell me, let me know. I try and to build that communication to where it's always a safe space. Mm-hmm. And it's more like education, entertainment, like let's talk about it, not, oh, that's terrible. So it makes it to where it's an easy, approachable thing, but that thing is the devil.
So, I already kind of, I guess, worked around this question a little bit, but you were here last week with Matt. And just walking around our gym, you could easily have been mistaken for a strength and conditioning coach, right? Maybe it's the exercise science background, all that, but there was movement awareness, the way that you coached, the verbiage you use, like it was a massive differentiator from other golf instructors that I've interacted with over the years. So I'm curious, like obviously you're a curious guy. What that was probably what led you to acquire that skill set. You saw value for it, but I'm actually more interested in what was the roadmap to develop it, right? Was it a lot of just like stumbling, falling on your face, figuring things out, hanging around with smart people, reading specific books? Like what was the path to being, a golf instructor who could basically more than hold his own at any strength and conditioning conversation?
So I think the first part was definitely some of the education. I did formal education, which I'd probably forgotten. I'm looking over a bunch of books that are over here that I've had still got from college. So some of that's there, but more than anything, like Greg Rose is a very good friend of mine. He mentored me a lot from the body stuff, but more than anything, it's the strength and conditioning coaches that for a long time, Jason Glass, Lance Gill, and myself traveled all over the world teaching level one seminars. But Lance is at ATC. He went to Penn State. The smart guy, spent a lot of time with Dr. Mike Voigt. Jason Glass is one of the best strength and conditioning coaches on the planet. Very, very good. Specializes in rotary sports, extreme sports. So we would have countless hours of like conversations all over the world about different things. So by osmosis, I learned a lot of by listening a lot. And then if you look at the TPI advisory board, there's some really smart people that are to do with that in the strength and conditioning world. So I got a lot of access to those people. And then on the PGA Tour, when I had questions, it was the physical therapists, the chiros, the golf instruction part was there wasn't as many questions on the technical stuff because you had a lot of the information. There was questions always on the coaching piece on, well, how would you get somebody to do something? Or what do you think? Someone like Jamie Mulligan or Randy Smith, some older guys who I've got a lot of respect for, good friends of mine that have been around a long time, Chuck Cook. But when it came to like the body and understanding, okay, well, how would you create change and what does hypertrophy going to do to somebody and what are the strategies you could use? It was always talking to PTs, chiros, and S&C folks. And I think the just being able to hold a conversation properly is like, oh, we better learn to talk in their terms. Lots of golf professionals throw around medical jargon and anatomical terms because they think it makes them sound smart, but I don't really use those with golf pros. I would only try and use them in your company of yours so that you can have breathing and you can have conversation. But it's really immersing myself in that community and then trying to understand, okay, well, what are they saying there? How's that going to work? And then getting into biomechanics with Sasha McKenzie, Mike Duffy, people like that. I think that's been very helpful because to understand some of that and Dr. Kwan's work, you need to have more of that anatomical brain kind of turned on. And I think it was really by necessity of I want to understand and want to learn. So I should probably do the right thing and learn and understand enough to be dangerous. Now, I'm by no means competent. Being Ben Shears and I spend a lot of time together again. And it's like understanding, oh, here's the problem, what we're trying to do. We're trying to produce force or we're trying to produce rotation or we're trying to produce stability. How will we do that? Like there's a lot of concepts on I want to learn and it's fascinating. And I think that's probably where it comes from. And then I know that to get the change in an athlete that I want, it's the strength and conditioning folks that are able to do it. The good ones. I'm not talking about just your trainer down the street, but like a proper expert. That's where I see massive, huge gains for my players. So it's the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. And I think that's probably where it's come from. It's more that community I have a big affinity for. They make my job much easier. And it's trying to immerse myself and trying to learn. And I always learn something. And then that just makes me better at my job because if I understand the body, then all of a sudden a lot of these other things are trivial. I'm like, oh, it's a waste of my time because they're not actually going to be able to do that. Or, oh yeah, actually you could do it this way. It's much easier.
I love that. Now, how about the youth side of things? Because you spent a lot of time in that realm. Obviously, that's something that your practice, in Alabama is built on as well. You want the future, successful PGA players. We see some pretty bad missteps in this realm in the baseball world. Some of this stuff is absolutely absurd. Everything from just the crazy year-round participation and overuse to really just building the pyramid upside down, right? Being very skill specific when in reality they need to really build a foundation. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you face in developing young golfers?
I'd say the biggest thing is everybody wants to be great right now. So the long-term athletic development model and understanding of, physical literacy and being basically able to have functional movement and add a baseline physical fitness, they're no concept to that. Most of these kids come to golf because they tried everything else.
Mhm.
They're out of shape, deconditioned, and they think golf's going to be great. Well, golf probably arguably requires more acuity and dexterity and hand-eye coordination than any of the others put together. So it lends itself to a bit of a problem, but I think I'm notorious for there's lots of kids that develop in our programs that are really good players, and there's generally regression because they end up getting injured because they overuse and they do too much. And I'm like, well, you need to do less, not more. Let's develop some of the skills that you're ready for now and then have fun with it. But just don't do it all the time. Like you're developing, you're growing. You're probably going to get injured if you keep doing this. So I'm known as sometimes I'm the fun buster because I'm always like, hey, it's a game to have fun with, but let's not overload them and let's not overuse it and play other sports. I'm big on like, whatever sport you want to play, go play it.
Mhm.
It's a bit of a battle with baseball and basketball because of the seasons and the way things run. And coaches, oh, you can't do both. And if you play golf, it's going to ruin your baseball swing. I'm like, gee, okay. Why do all the baseball players play golf when they're not playing baseball in the majors?
And pick it up pretty easily too, right?
Yeah.
The baseball guys and the hockey players are all great golfers.
Again, it's like, it's one of those things where there's so much, old wives' tales and nonsensical information out there. Spend most of the time sort of educating people and trying to be like, look, golf is a great game. There's lots of different skills and you've got to learn to play the game. I'm big on teaching kids to play the game without worrying about, oh, you got to be here at this stage. You got to be here at this stage. You got to be, because now people are developing later anyway. I'd much rather them play lots of sports. So I would say with our younger kids, I'm a big fan of developing their movement skills and physical literacy, and then teaching them golf's pretty easy. So a lot of the TPI junior model is kind of what we run. We look at growth velocities, we measure them, see where they're at. But then it's more a question of a lot of it is fun and making the game, like creating a love for the game. But then also trying to educate them on, look, it's a game of a lifetime. You don't have to be good now. Enjoy the process of trying to learn about the game and play the game and get on the golf course all the time. We have lots of people who think that they're just hitting golf balls is the way to go. And that generally doesn't. We get kids coming from everywhere of all different cultures. Certain cultures think that by hitting lots and lots of golf balls, purely doing that, you're going to get better. But they have great golf swings, but they have no idea how to use them. So I think it's one of those things we educate a lot. I'm probably notoriously overly protective. But again, I think I've got 3 kids of my own. It's one of those things where you're trying to do no harm again and set them up for success. And in the long run, if you do the right thing, it might hurt you in the short term, fiscally speaking. In the long term, you build a lot of goodwill and you create a lot of kids that will like golf and they'll play well and they'll play healthy and they have a chance. Otherwise, if you don't, you spend a lot of time regressing back and rehabbing, and then it's not a lot of fun and they get injured. So I think long-term athletic development's massive. I think developing juniors is a skill. We've got some great coaches that do it, that's what they do. Max here and Parker, 2 of my younger guys, do a phenomenal job. I had another guy, Chip, who's now gone on his own. They're great and the kids love them. And I think we basically have our academies a bit of a community center, if you like, and kids hang out, which I like.
Absolutely.
They'll see the best players in the world there. And the more time they spend there and they see the best players in the world, our middle bay is, we have 3 bays, but our middle bay has got a DAP machine, dumbbells, balls, kettlebells. When they see Justin Rose in there working out or Adam Hadwin, like they all see the best players in the world are doing it with their strength coach. They understand the value of movement. And it's not like these guys are in there doing a bunch of weight. They might be doing a get up or they might be doing some type of, rotational exercise on the DAP with not a lot of weight. And they're like, oh, okay. They start to understand like this is what we're developing, and they kind of get more buy-in. But I definitely think my goal is always try and treat kids, train them because you would, and give them the care and attention that you give the best players. because historically that's not what happens in golf. You give them the crappy assistant, they chuck a bunch of balls out, and then they don't get any attention, and they just develop bad habits, and that doesn't help them.
I love more is caught than taught. I can't tell you how many of like our current big league baseball players were teenagers who got to see our big league guys do their thing. Just being around them, being able to ask them questions, and kind of picking up on those tendencies. One of the things I've been wrestling with a little bit more, and I'm curious if it's the same with golf, is I'm a big believer, like the teenage years should be steady, linear improvements, right? If I take a kid and I put him on force plates, and I just measure peak velocity and jump momentum, right? Peak velocity, your body weight's going to increase as you go through puberty. If you can at least maintain or increase your peak velocity, you've gotten better, right? Jump momentum is going to go up. If you gain body weight and continue to get stronger over those years, it's going to help you hit a golf ball further, hit a baseball harder, right? Those things go without question. When I see a kid that's the same at 17 than he was at 15, like that tells me, A, this kid over specialized and got hurt. B, he skipped over a lot of the foundational, things that were really important, like getting involved in a good strength and conditioning program or, pursuing multiple sports. Or, he was just a kid that bought into strength and conditioning, but took 9 months off because his competitive season was so long. He just stayed exactly the same. Is it the same for you? Like, do you see those kids that think they can outsmart the system and are the same person at 17 or 18 that they were when you met them at 15?
Yeah, for sure. Now, the cool thing is when we look at force production, it's percentage of body weight.
Yeah.
So when you start to see, okay, you're putting out this percentage of your body weight, whether it's toe heel, whether it's
Yeah.
medial lateral, whether it's vertical, it's all relative to where their weight is, right? So it's like we have some people that follow a program, get better, and their force production increases. So I'm like, okay, they're doing good stuff. And then there's some people who are just naturally very skilled
Mhm.
at skill acquisition for golf, and they're brilliant at playing the game golf. But the problem is, all of a sudden, when Timmy over here wasn't very good, but's been doing all the work, and now all of a sudden, Timmy had a 4-cylinder engine, and now he's been doing all of the right stuff, the basic foundation work, and now he's starting to be able to really lift. And all of a sudden, he starts smashing it, and he's learning to play the game. We've got the kid here who is really good. He just gets lapped. And then these kids just get really frustrated because the folks that do the right things, that are trained correctly, they continue to get better. Golf's a hard game. Not everybody acquires the skill to play the game quickly. Some people, it takes longer. But the folks that put in the hard yards and go like this, they overtake. These are the guys that regress. So the kids that are really good early, I'm always like, that's a flashing red light. It's come really easy. They've got no incentive to work. And I was the kid who was the complete opposite.
Yeah.
I was shitty, not very good early. Try. All my buddies who don't play golf anymore, some of them are incredible. I can remember I used to be the kid. I'd be putting on the putting green, and they'd be sitting in the dining room playing matches in their ties and jackets and everything, and I'm out there grinding. Well, now none of them really play golf, and I went on and played college golf, and now you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
the kids that do it right, you have to be creative with the motivation. But I see exactly the same thing. If they've done the right things, eventually they catapult forwards, and the folks that were really good, who've always been good, so why should I work?
Yeah.
I always say the folks that come from humble means that have a high motivation generally have a high success rate. The folks that have it easy, even if they're gifted, their motivation's not quite the same. They don't have the same work ethic. Now, when you get the kid who is talented and does work, that's the scary stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are incredible, like become really, really good. But if they're good early and it's easy, it's always a bit of a warning sign. My job then is to try and nurture and cultivate. Hey, you see Rosie doing that? You see, Adam doing that? You see Fitzy doing that? Why are you not doing that? He's one of the best players in the world. They're major champions. Yeah, I should probably do that.
Big leagues is full of late bloomers. I'm guessing the PGA Tour is as well.
Yeah, and definitely. And I think more and more with the technology and the way coaching has advanced, there's more and more of that now.
So you've demonstrated a ton of humility about how much you feel like you still don't know, but I'm curious, if I ask you what's something you've changed your mind on recently, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a great question. Changed my mind on. I would say I'm always I'm always pretty open-minded, to be honest. Like if I see that something works pretty good, I mean, I'm notorious for I'll try anything that's crazy, crazy diets, crazy ideas, anything. So I mean, stuff I've changed my mind. I don't know because I would say my mind is never made up. My mind is
It's a
always
great answer, actually.
pretty pliable. Does that make sense? It's
Yeah,
one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I'm not. I can't really answer that. I would say what makes me above average is at my job is I'm pretty curious and I'm willing to try stuff a few times to see if there's anything there. Like no,
yeah.
don't leave anything unturned. So I
Kind
think
of method agnostic.
yes, and I would say that's one of the things that's probably stood me in pretty good stead. That anything can probably work for someone but not everybody is someone, and that's the hard part. We're always trying to find strategies that when you're at the top tip of the spear, everyone's so unique. I think you have to be so open-minded because something could always help one of your players, and that's usually the lens I look at something from.
Absolutely. What about something that's a new frontier that maybe you're digging in on now that really excites you? In other words, this is the what's keeping you up at 3 a.m. as you stare into blackness question.
Yeah. So I think we're at our infancy on really understanding the neurological part, the brain. I think AI in golf is a scary thing, but I think it's a real thing. I think trying to get answers to questions about like how does this work? How do we better use this? Because obviously there's certain endeavors that use the brain a lot more effectively than golf does. People know what to do, but they don't always do what they know they should. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting to me. So I'm like, how do I better understand that? So I'd say the neurological side of things is always fascinating. I hope at some point we get diagnostic stuff that can be used in the field during competition.
Mhm.
That's the part where like real live data. We've got it now with radars on what the ball is, the ball behavior and the club somewhat. But like, what are they actually doing biomechanically on certain shots? I think that will come at some point. I think real
Yeah,
time live markerless stuff is
yeah,
probably at some point, and that to me will be fascinating because then we can see what's really significant and what's fluff, so to speak. So that stuff,
that's
tech
exciting stuff.
always the future stuff always excites me. And then are we tapped out there, or have we got a long way to learn? And I think AI could help us with a lot of that stuff.
That's fascinating. I think your point about markerless biomechanics I mean, it's already happened in sports where you play inside of a stadium, right? Because cameras, things like that can be mounted. You have Hawkeye data in baseball, things like Kinetrack Simi have been mounted in stadiums for well over a decade now. So it is an exciting time. So I don't know how you set it up at a golf course, but someone's probably working on it.
And that's the hard part
Yeah.
about golf is that you never play the same
Transient. Yeah.
twice, and shots are all over the place. So
Yeah.
it's like that's the challenge that technology hopefully can overcome.
Nice. Well, hopefully we got some AI geniuses listening to this podcast and they give us a cut of the proceeds when the day comes.
There you go.
All right. So last question. Tell me about your book, The Coaching Code. Admittedly, I have not read it. I'm excited to check it out. I
Copy.
love it. Right. Perfect, man. We'll check it out. But who's it for? What was the impetus for writing it?
So it's basically it's a book. It's the art and science of coaching. So it's it's not people are like, I can't believe you've written a book that's not a technical book. And I'm like, well, why would you write a technical book? Because a technical book is going to be hit or miss. It could be good for you or it could be terrible, but it's designed to be more of a coaching leadership book where everybody who reads it will kind of have a better understanding. This is what high performance is like. This is
Love it.
basically a roadmap to developing high performance from a technical perspective in any endeavor, but then also the artistic part of coaching and human interaction and leading people to do things. And how do you do that? And then it's golf as kind of the parable, if you like stories from players from the last 20 years of
Love
coaching.
it.
But the chapters are like data drives decisions, find the calm in the chaos, check your work. What you say is more important. Or sorry, what you don't say is more important. Stack the deck, learn while losing, illuminate the path, identify the real problem, be subjectively objective, make inputs match outputs, engineer engagement, project your empathy, and then activate the code. So it's all about the sort of, if you like, tenets that you need or that you could operate by if you're coaching people to do something. So yeah, the big launch is in November, but it's kind of had a soft launch and it's got quite good responses. My writer at Golf Digest for the last sort of 17 years, Matt Rudy, he wrote it with me. He writes a lot of books for a lot of people. So
Love it.
his idea was, I wrote a manuscript and then he's like, well, I think it would be good if we kind of expressed kind of how you coach and then we'll kind of what makes you do things a little differently and how you blend the sort of human development with the science and putting the pieces together. And so that's kind of like, lots of people have said, yeah, that'd be a great book for coaches. It'd be a good book for athletes. So I'll definitely get you a signed copy when I'm back down your way. I'll bring it to the gym.
That'd be amazing. And this stuff is important.
Too.
Like we have a lot of like young coaches that listen to this, up and comers who want to learn how to write programs yesterday. They want to coach professional athletes yesterday, and they're looking in all the wrong places, right? They're trying to find the cool exercise on Instagram, or they're looking something that's sensationalized on YouTube or whatever it is. Like the tried and true principles come from spending your time around really good veteran coaches, right? And you're opening your brain, you're sharing a lot of wisdom in a book like that. So if folks are listening to this, like this is something they need to check out. That's important stuff.
And I would say, I tell everybody, I'm kind of more old school, pragmatic. Like, does it work? Does it pass the sniff test? I'm not new age. I always say I'm way more Nick Saban than I am Pete Carroll. That makes sense. Like, here's the process, build the program, build the plan, work the plan. There aren't really any shortcuts. And when you talk to every great athlete, they want it to be coached, they want to be driven, and they want to be pushed.
Yeah.
If you want cheerleading and fluffing, there's a place for that. You might have to do some of that, but that isn't what gets to get it done. And there is no shortcuts. Like I've doing it 25 years, whatever. I feel like an idiot every day. Oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that. So I tell everyone, be curious, be driven, like try and find answers and have better solutions for the athletes that you're helping and get them there, get the athlete there quickly because you have a big enough knowledge to be able to make it really simple for them to follow and be compliant with, and you'll be successful. And I think every great coach like yourself I've seen, that's what they do. They don't do anything super fancy. It's like, man, they make it so simple. They just make it so easy for the athlete. And that's what all I try and do. And that's where other sports do a much better job than golf. So kudos to you and thank you.
Wow, this is amazing, man. That's a great point to end on. Where can folks find out about you? What's the best place to learn more?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, blackburngolf.com, and then you can also go to Instagram, the devil, I'm on there, things on there or on X. But yeah, no, or you can email me, mark@blackburngolf.com. But happy to help any coaches. Again, I think the more we share, the more we learn, the better everybody gets who's in our sort of space.
This is awesome, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. As we predicted on the front end, I learned a lot. Hopefully you picked up some good tidbits too, and I'm sure everyone listening really benefited a lot too.
I appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you soon, and I will bring you a copy of this by your gym.
You're the man. We'll catch up with you very soon.
Thanks, buddy.